Pilot Boys in the building. Welcome to the Pilot Boys podcast, where you'll get the real on all things sports, music, and pop culture. I am Mecca Don here with my co-host V.
Mamba mentality for life.
Today is May 7th, 2020. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. We are quarantined and social distancing due to this coronavirus pandemic, but we're still going to figure out a way to bring you a great show at all costs. And on today's show, we will talk to Klutch sports agent and attorney, Kelton Crenshaw. He's going to talk to us about everything, man, from all of his experiences with LeBron James, how he became an agent, how he became an attorney. He was a promoter, his experiences with Emory and Rock Nation, and so much more. We will also do a news and notes segment talking about all kinds of things in sports, music, and pop culture, from Chris Brown, Young Thug, the NBA, the Cleveland Browns, R.I.P. Don Shula, The Last Dance, and so much more. Make sure that you guys definitely check out our Patreon. Don't forget that our subscribers will get their episodes a night early on Wednesdays. Check out Patreon, www.patreon.com/Boys Podcast. And don't forget, grab your Pilot Boys wristbands at shop.pilotboys.com. Let's go.
Where the Pilot Boys at? Pilot Boys, we get on up. We don't fly, boys, we getting up. So Pilot Boys, we get on up.
You are listening to the Pilot Boys Podcast. Our next guest is an NFL agent and attorney for Klutch Sports Group and also an entrepreneur. Please welcome to the show, Kelton Crenshaw. What's up, Kelton? How you doing?
Doing well, man. How y'all doing? Staying safe out here, man.
Yeah, that's all we can do. Thanks for joining us, man.
You're doing well, man, after you had a nice draft there. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. I appreciate y'all having me on, man.
Oh, no problem.
Definitely. So, we wanted to have you on. Obviously, Columbus helped us reconnect, but we've known each other's story for quite a while. And I think why we wanted to have you on is because you really do have a fascinating story that has many different layers to it, right? From branding to the agent world to being an attorney. You had always had a plan, it seems like, in terms of trusting the process, right? And having your own process of how you were going to achieve success. We first met, I think, back in 2005 or 2006 in Cleveland when you were Rich wasn't Rich Paul yet, and you weren't Kelton Crenshaw, and I wasn't myself yet, but we were all just young guys trying to figure out a way to make it in a very, very fascinating but difficult industry, right? And at that time in Cleveland, it was like something that the city had not seen before, with LeBron's first run in Cleveland, kind of celebrities coming to town at that rate, and the opportunity to even have celebrity-centered parties was unique at the time. But at that time, we were just throwing parties. We were just trying to have a good time, trying to figure out what we were doing. I think you were at Cleveland State at that time. Can you kind of take us into that start, how you got involved with 8081, how you got involved with Rich?
Yeah, so I was out of school. I had just finished I graduated undergrad in 2002. So a few years before, I met you, I finished undergrad, but I met Rich at Cleveland State, probably like our second year. So like right around the time, like he was getting cool with LeBron, and, their relationship was developing. It was kind of around the same time that Rich and I became close. We met kind of similar to how he met LeBron, like Rich, like it was crazy because I had switched to night school for a semester, and everybody was telling me like it was this dude at school that, was kind of on my heels as far as dressing. You know what I mean? Like then, I had a little reputation for putting some clothes on, so they like, yo, this dude Rich, he on your ass, I had switched back to days like the following semester, and I had bumped into him in the UC. I was like, yo, what's up, man? I'm Kelt, man. I heard you've been killing it with the clothes and whatnot, and we just got cool. And like around that time, he was starting to get connected with the guys in Atlanta, Distant Replays he was selling jerseys from. So I started buying jerseys from Rich, and we just got super close.
And so how did you guys then transition your friendship into a business relationship with 8081?
So as far as with 8081, so Rich, one of his best friends is a guy by the name of Edward Givens. Everybody knows him as either Duck or Smalls.
Yeah.
Rich was already kind of like, around like '05, Rich was already like doing a lot of like crazy stuff, like stuff that you know what I'm saying, like young dudes from Cleveland just don't do, like, taking private jets and card games with Jay-Z and, just crazy shit like that. So,
Right.
like that. Sorry, excuse me.
Nah, you good. You good. You good.
Yeah, so like Duck and I were still, we were in the city, like, you know what I'm saying? So he and I got real cool just because like we were always around. And, it was kind of like, we had, we traveled a bit, but, obviously Rich was traveling on a higher level. But just in terms of like the nightlife and certain things we were seeing in other markets, we felt like Cleveland didn't have. It was kind of like either you had like what Arnold was doing at the time, which was kind of like grown and sexy, for lack of a better term, or like just straight hood, like,
Right.
It wasn't really like a lot of brown in terms of our nightlife. So we just kind of came together and we're like, yo, let's do something. Let's try to carve our own lane out. And, obviously, with, the relationship we had with LeBron, it just, we were able to pretty much go into any venue and say, look, we can't promise LeBron will be here, but if he goes out, and, he's probably going to come to one of our events. So we just were able to leverage that relationship. And, that's kind of how we created 8081 from, the event side. And then, later came the blog and, some of the that was like our first foray into like some of the corporate, events and, the more upscale stuff with like LeBron's brand partners and whatnot.
Right. Talk a little bit about that time during Cleveland too, because I used to be out there partying with V and all you guys too, and it was just an exciting time in Cleveland. And not to say it's not exciting now, but that period of time just seemed special.
It was a different energy for sure. Especially like it's crazy because like, we were even joking about it the last time Brown was here. Like when we won the Eastern Conference Championship in '07, I mean, you would have thought we won the championship.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We partied the whole night. I mean, it was just so much excitement in the city. Like, everybody was like, it was just turned up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then like, fast forward to when he came back the second time, we went to the finals 4 years in a row. Like when we were winning those Eastern Conference championships, nobody even cared. Like,
right.
Like outside, like it was kind of crazy. So, I mean, it was like a fresh energy, like V was saying, just in terms of like, you never know who you'll catch at a Cavs game. Like I remember like, Jay-Z, being with Jay-Z, like back then they had a little area at the Q. You probably remember V called the Vault.
Yeah.
We were all in the vault kicking it like with Hov. Like, so, I mean, just things that you would never think would happen in a city like Cleveland. You know what I mean? Because like, people don't really, Cleveland is like one of those cities that's like an old money town. I mean, you guys know, you're from here. I mean, you're here. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like the social scene isn't there at all.
No.
We have, 3 major sports teams. It's a lot of money here. And not really like the social life just isn't where it should be, I guess, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, and I think what happened at that time is like we brought in energy from outside, right? And I think that's what helped. They hadn't seen stuff like that, so initially people caught on, but it's hard to sustain anything in that market. But what I wanted to touch on in terms of what being in these spaces do, right? There are a lot of people who just enjoy the fact that, I got to spend a night out with LeBron, or I got to spend a night out with Jay-Z. Wow, I got to meet him. But I think there's a separate group of people who take those opportunities and actually look at them as opportunities for themselves, right? And I think that's what all of you guys have done in a way. When did that start coming into your mind? Like, there's something bigger here than just partying and having good events and making a couple thousand, at the door?
I mean, I guess the simple answer is I just felt like I didn't really have, like me personally, like when you're like meeting these people and you're networking, like saying that you throw parties just doesn't really read. You know what I'm saying? I was like, if I go to law school and I say I'm an attorney, someone might have, an opportunity for me that's like actually sustainable.
Yep.
It's like, like with the nightlife, you're constantly like trying to reinvent yourself. And, it's just a constant, especially in a place like Cleveland where you're not like, when LeBron left, I mean, 80-81 was rolling, but we had to pivot. And like, we just saw like how the energy in the city just died down those years when he was in Miami. Like,
right.
So I just kind of felt like I didn't want to continue to have my career, my livelihood tied up in such a fickle business model.
I understand completely. We, we were once considered promoters. I also went to law school too. I'm a lawyer. I don't know if you know that, but and you're right though. There's kind of a different way people treat you. When they think that you're just a promoter, so to speak, versus even just being in law school. You don't even necessarily have to be a lawyer yet, right? People start to take you a little bit more seriously, and I realized that started to happen with us. What was it that made you feel like law school specifically, though, was the move for you as opposed to different other things? You're a smart dude, so you probably could have done many other things.
Well, I just kind of felt like, being in Cleveland, like it's a city, it's a blue collar city, it's very trade based. And I felt like, I could get my MBA with like a concentration in marketing or something like that, but it wouldn't really do me any good in Cleveland, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Right.
I feel like, being a lawyer or an attorney is like almost like a trade. Like you're like, it's a thing. Like I'm an attorney.
Right.
Like,
right.
It was like, you're not an MBA. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that, I know it probably sounds kind of dumb.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Like,
yeah.
You have a master's, it doesn't really give you any extra rights to, like there's nothing that's like you have to swear in when you're an attorney. Like you don't have to swear in when you get your master's. And I just feel like, I had a decent amount of experience as an entrepreneur. I was already kind of making moves on my own, and I just kind of felt like, well, this is like, the legal route would give me some skills that I hadn't really tapped into, in my opinion.
And you eventually ended up taking the bar in New York, is that right?
Yeah, I never took it in Ohio. I took it in New York. Because at the time, so towards the end of my law school, I had linked up with these guys that had this footwear customization company, and they were working with Emory, who was like Jay-Z's best friend. So this was like shortly after Emory had just came home from his situation, and we were doing some consulting. We were doing we had this shoe called the Brooklyn Zoo that Jay-Z wore, the opening night at Barclays. It got us a bunch of attention. So I was in New York a lot. So I actually thought I probably was gonna end up moving to New York. So that's why I took the bar up there.
Well, it's funny. I'm barred in New York too. I'm from Columbus, but I went to New York for NYU for law school. Took the bar in New York. I lived there, since 2002. So it's just I understand the value of it. And I also have to imagine too, just a little bit on that. One more question on that is just kind of the cachet, right, of being barred in New York, being an attorney in New York versus being an attorney elsewhere. Did you also realize the magnitude of that kind of that cachet when you were deciding where to take it? Or was it more just that's where you were physically?
No, yeah. I mean, I felt like it had, it held a little more weight in terms of, the circles I was traveling in, it just, like you say, it definitely has a bit of a, I mean, obviously I got major love for Ohio, but,
yeah, of course.
When you say you're licensed to practice law in New York.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I want to spend a little bit of time on the fashion part. We kind of got an idea of where the inspiration came from back in college and school when you were dressing. But you've made some major moves and been part of some major movements in that space with TACMA and with I think to a degree with the work you've done with Emory.
Right.
Take us into how you turned or found that opportunity of taking your passion for fashion and creating and getting involved in an opportunity where you could turn that into a business?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I never thought it would happen. You know what I mean? Especially like being in Cleveland, it's just not a fashion, it's not even on the radar in terms of fashion.
Yeah.
Right.
Being like a fashion hub or anything like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I honestly literally never thought it would happen. I owned a bar up here. And a guy that was DJing for me at the time, he was, good friends with these guys that had that customization company. And that's when I saw that there was actually a chance to kind of monetize my passion for fashion. They were kind of going through some things financially, and at the time I was doing okay. So, I just kind of, helped them bootstrap the business. And, obviously I had the relationships with LeBron and some athletes, Emory on the Jay-Z side. So, I mean, we were getting great placements. We were getting a lot of attention from the media. And, we were able to kind of leverage that and to do some consulting things. We had a great partnership with New Era for a few years, which, like me and Emory joke all the time, like when we were doing stuff with New Era, they were kind of dead. Like the fitted hat was dead. Everybody was on Mitchell and Ness. Everybody was on snapbacks. And now you see the pendulum swinging back. And we felt like we played a major part of that with Emory with the Paper Planes hat and some of the collaborations that we did with New Era to kind of bring attention to them and kind of make, some, people that actually move the needle feel like it was kind of cool to embrace New Era and kind of bring that energy back into the headwear space.
Yeah, and I want, you can kind of segue into that. Emory's a fascinating character. Everyone knows him from Jay-Z name dropping him and what he did for him, right? Back in the day, but you introduced me to him at the All-Star game in Houston.
Okay.
And what was fascinating, he had just gotten out. What's fascinating about him is this is a guy who spent a long time out of the world, right?
Right.
But he's come back and he's able to move culture forward.
Right.
What made him able to do that? You've spent a lot of time working with him. And what do you think?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And what do you think is the reason behind him coming out and not being able to not even skipping a beat and establishing himself?
Yeah, I mean, Emory he's a special guy, man. You know what I'm saying? Like Emory is one of the brightest, sharpest. I mean, and some people just get it. Like he's an inherently fly dude. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it was easy for him to kind of maneuver and pick up a lot of speed, and he was just passionate, like, and that's a lot. I picked up a lot of things with Emory, especially, watching him because, we were similarly situated in terms of having strong relationships with like mega, celebrities or people of like, that are very, held in very high regards.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, he never took it for granted. You know what I'm saying? Like every day he got up, he went to the office, the Rock Nation office every day, worked all day. Like he wasn't like, he never took it for granted. He was never like, oh, Jay's my man. He owes me whatever in the past. It was, he embraced it, with open arms, and he grinded. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember like those early Puma meetings, like just like, they always like, yo, Emory, what's up with Jay? And Emory just held him off. He was super strategic and throughout that whole process, because like you look at, so like the Meek Mill Puma relationship, that was like one of the first big relationships that Puma had, like on the Rock Nation side. Then they transitioned from him to Rihanna, and that kind of put Puma back on the map from a fashion lifestyle standpoint. And then like after they had done a bunch of great business and great things together, Emory kind of finally felt like it was time to, bring Jay into the fold, and the rest is history.
When you're behind the scenes, like on some of those deals, or at least seeing some of those deals happen, or help even creating them, right? You're actually shaping culture, right? And you're shaping experiences for people, things that people will look back on and be like, oh yeah, I remember that period of time. That was a significant period of time in my life. Do you feel like you kind of understood, as you were kind of involved behind the scenes with these brands and marketing, do you feel like you understood the magnitude of what was actually happening while it was happening? Or is that something that, you will reflect on later on in life?
I always felt like I did. Just like I kind of always felt like I did understand the magnitude. I feel like sometimes, you know, even like our brand partners and other people might not have really understood, what we were
Right.
doing, the magnitude of
Right.
it. But I kind of always knew, just based on the people that we were involved with, the relationships that we have, when we set out to do something, like that's our, our goal, our mission is to impact the culture on
Yeah.
some level, no matter how small or how big. You know what I mean? Like, and I knew just based on even like what we did with 8081 in Cleveland, which kind of branched out throughout the Midwest. So, I always felt confident that, anytime the platform gets bigger, we have an opportunity to, to impact more and more people. Because if I could do it in Cleveland, I felt like I could do it anywhere.
For sure.
Yeah, yeah, and so you had the fashion part of your lifestyle brand experience, but you've also learned a lot about the liquor business, right? With your partnership, you partnered with Emory again on the Douce side of things, which is the cognac, Jay-Z's cognac brand, and now I'm excited about your partnership with Jacques and Fabulous with Flow. Tell us a little bit about that industry, how you got involved, and why you think it's growing so rapidly from a culture standpoint.
Well, I mean, you figure. I mean, you both you guys know just from being promoters. I mean, alcohol is obviously, you meet liquor reps and you know you see what people are into with a drink, and so you kind of, you get a feel for, the liquor business from that entry point, if you will. So just like I said, I owned a bar, the promotions, things of that nature, and then once Duce started rolling, you know, you know, I, we helped cultivate a lot of the energy and excitement about that in the Midwest, via our relationship with Emory, and it was just a great partnership. You know what I mean? Like Emory, he really, because Jay doesn't do like a lot of parties and stuff like that. So like during like a lot of the various tours that Jay was doing, like Magna Carta, the first On the Run tour, Emory was hosting a lot of those after parties, and we were able to leverage Duce with Emory to create some excitement and energy around the brand, and Duce has grown tremendously, and you know that kind of led to the Flow situation. Just I mean, B, Jack pretty well,
Yeah.
but Jack and I, we went to high school together. We've been friends for I mean, you're talking 95, like 96, 95. So you know what I'm saying? I know him
Right.
Yeah.
time. So, we had reconnected randomly. He was like, "Yo, I got this vodka I'm doing," and obviously I had been hearing about it, but I didn't really know how serious he was about it until like I sat down with him and like we drove out to Milwaukee a couple of weeks after that. He had like a huge partnership with the Milwaukee Bucks at the time. He had like a lounge, Bradley Center.
He makes things happen, man. He's a miracle worker.
He had like four, courtside seats, that were like branded with Flow. So, I said,
Wow.
Jock is he's serious about it.
Right.
Like, I mean, 'cause like Jock is a cool dude. He's a
Yeah.
hustler. So I figured, he was gonna make it happen on some level. But like to see it for myself, I was like, yo, wow, this is major. So
Yeah.
like, I started like kind of chipping in and just giving them some advice and sharing some insight that I had just from being in it, working in the liquor business, and some of the relationships I had. I try to familiarize people with the brand. And one time we were riding home from Milwaukee, and he was like, "Yo, I want to get a rapper to lock in with the brand, like who an artist, I should say. He didn't say specifically rapper. Like, I want to get an artist to kind of tie into the brand to kind of help, spread the brand name and get some awareness out." And I was like, Fab, I think Fab would be dope just because I remember what he did with like the Cocoloso with Ciroc, and, Hypnotic back in the day. So like,
Hypnotic.
yeah, Fab is always like one of those guys. He's like, he's like our age, our age, but he still is tapped in with like youth culture, and he has a lot of influence. He influences the influencers, which is like, I hate that term, but it's true.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
you know, I kind of felt like he would be dope. So I reached out to Lenny and Kodak Lens on Instagram, for Lenny S for those who don't know. But you know, I
Hmm.
reached out to Lenny, and you know, Jock. You know, I spoke to Lenny, then we all connected. Lenny said what the number was looking like, and you know, Jock made it happen. You know what I'm saying? And that was, you know, and that also, you know, Jock and I joke about that all the time because you know him and Fab have like a super close relationship now. But you know, for me, it was just like a relief because, like, you know, like you connect somebody once again, like I'm connecting my man. You know, I'm connecting these two parties,
You're
and
putting
like,
your rep on the line.
yeah,
Yeah.
like you always kind of like get nervous, especially like the numbers getting thrown around. You're like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
they're trying to come by pockets, but you like at the same
Right.
time, you're like, yo, you know what I'm saying? I hope
Right.
my man don't make me look bad, but
Right.
you know, everybody delivered on their end. It ended up being a great partnership, and you know, they have a great relationship to this day. So I mean, that was dope just to be a part of that and just to play my little part in that whole situation.
It was also amazing to see how, like, how much of all of these kind of businesses intersect, right? Like entertainment and sports and liquor, you know what I mean? Fashion, obviously.
Right.
And it seems like you've been kind of at the, in big deals with all of those things. And then now you're also an agent. And so talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, it's funny, you remind us a lot of ourselves, right? I think we're kind of very like-minded. But you seem to be a guy that doesn't feel like there are any limitations on what it is that you can do. And now you're obviously an agent and you're with Klutch Sports. Talk to us about kind of that process and what that's been like.
Well, I mean, I always wanted to get into player representation on some level. I wasn't really sure exactly how or in what way I would go about it, but you know, throughout that whole process of just being with Klutch, you know, close with Rich and you know LRMR, Mav, and Brian and those guys, and just kind of seeing the business develop on the business side of sports develop. You know, I also had a lot of relationships with a lot of NFL guys, and I always felt like football players kind of got the short end of the stick, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Their representation, the opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So I felt like, at some point, Rich was going to come around to getting involved in football on some level.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, I'm just going to get certified with the NFLPA and, start creating relationships and grinding and, seeing if I can make some things shake. And hopefully at some point it'll all come full circle. And, this year it finally did. We were blessed to have a great draft.
Oh, yeah.
That's the short version of how things.
Right. Right.
Well, I think it underlines a big part of the reason why you've been successful, right? Instead of going to Rich first and saying, "Yo, Rich, let's do this," you kind of figured out a way to create power for yourself, right? Getting your agent's license is a power move. Utilizing your own relationships to get started is a power move that then when you go to someone like Rich, they take you a lot more seriously, right?
No, for sure.
And I think that's a critical lesson from your story. So talking about Rich a little bit, that transition, Klutch is, first of all, his story is very similar, right? In terms of just kind of networking and thinking about how to find his place in this world without just relying on LeBron to just hand him stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he got into basketball. Now you guys are in football, and to make the impact that you made in the first year, getting 2 of the top 3 picks and another first rounder, kind of in your first major draft class. Tell us a little bit about that process of saying, okay, we're going to get into football now, and also coming in with the type of bang that you guys have come in with.
So, I mean, it was just kind of like a perfect storm, honestly. Like I said, I had mentioned it to Rich, after I got certified, like, yo, let's do this, da da da. He was like, I'm not ready yet, Kelt. So I just kind of was doing my own thing. And then Rich linked up with a gentleman by the name of Demarius Bilbo, who's the head of football. He already had been kind of, doing some pretty substantial business on the football space. And it's kind of wild because we call him Bilbo. Bilbo and I had some conversations about working together, but we never could get on the same page back, even before the Klutch thing. So we had somewhat of a relationship. But Bilbo, he's a great. I mean, he's got a lot of juice in that space. I mean, he played in the league for like 3 or 4 years. He helped build Todd France. Todd France, who's a big agent at CAA. He helped
CIA.
and he ended up leaving and doing his own thing. But Bilbo has a lot of great experience, and just kind of what he brings to the table, and my relationships, and just kind of some of the doors that I'm able to open that kind of transcend the sport, along obviously with Klutch, and under that umbrella, it's just kind of like it's honestly just been a great partnership, man. Like like the first meeting that we had, Bilbo and I had together with a prospective client, the chemistry was crazy just out the gate, and we had never like sat down. We didn't like have a bunch of like long meetings, long prep meetings. We just kind of like, yo, this is what it is, because we speak the same language. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to build guys' brands, we want to cultivate their brands, we want to develop them as professionals beyond the game. We like to make sure our clients are educated on all facets of the business. So, I mean, there was a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels between the way we think and the way we view the representation business. So it just kind of, we hit it off right away.
And speaking on that too, it's, it seems like there's, first of all, V and I have, we've kind of become de facto, and I'm sure this was true for you too. We kind of become de facto kind of consultants for a lot of athletes over the years, just because we were always kind of the smartest ones around, right? And we always knew a lot of different stuff. But it always seemed like there was a space for what you're talking about, which is, companies or entities that care more than just about getting guys signed, right? They care about their lives, they care about their, their families, their businesses, life after football, life after sports, all of that. And it seems like you guys have kind of focused on that. But another thing that was very telling about this particular draft, and you probably heard this, is that, I think half of the first rounders were represented by minorities. And that's the first time that's ever happened. And it seems as though we're starting to see more and more kind of minorities enter the space and become prevalent and dominant. Have you seen that? And what is your kind of opinion on why that's actually happening?
Well, I mean, I just think it was only a matter of time. Just to be frank, I feel like football's kind of slightly behind basketballs from a this like trend standpoint, like for lack of a better term. So like basketball players were already kind of going in that direction with guys like, going to, signing with Rich at Klutch and BDA. And, you were already starting to see a lot more of African Americans represent guys on the NBA side.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was only a matter of time before it happened on the football side. I also think that, part of the reason why it's changing is because, some of, a lot of, a few, most of the agents that had guys in the first round, like you mentioned, minority ones, they're just younger. You know what I'm saying? They're more energetic, they're more youthful, probably a little bit more hungry. So, obviously, representing somebody that looks like you and sounds like you and has some of the same experiences, that always helps. But I also just think it's just, I don't think that's the only reason why.
I think it's a youth movement too in some way.
Yeah, and maybe not so much age, but just the energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Grinding and just, reaching out and just, because a lot of these guys, they didn't have to do any legwork. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Football is such a game where it involves so much group think and team thinking. So it's kind of just like, all right, coach says go here, so I'm going there. And, these guys, they just show up and wine them and dine them and it's over with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
So I feel like that business model is dying now. I don't say dying. I feel like it's
It's under attack.
it's being
Yeah.
challenged a bit, you know.
Mhm.
So we'll see if other agencies or what have you get out and start working a little harder. But I just
One,
go ahead.
I have one other question on that too, because it seems like the other part of this is, a lot of these agencies that we're talking about, and agents and representation, they're not just random people, right? A lot of the power players, like for example, Young Money, obviously, Klutch, Rock Nation. I mean, these are big names that have celebrity and cachet attached to them, but also, and I think probably even more importantly, it seems as though a lot of the owners, or at least the heads of some of these agencies, are people who have been there and done that. So when you're actually going in and talking to these guys, you're not coming there from like just a person who just read some books about the business. You're a person who's been there and done that. You feel like that has a big influence also?
Yeah, I mean, anytime. I mean, it's just leveraging relationships. I mean, just
Mhm.
Yep.
I mean, kid, you get to take a picture with Jay-Z. I mean, that still reads. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Right.
Ron or Wayne or whoever the case. I mean, I mean
Mhm.
that's a real thing. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not going to sit up here and downplay and act like it doesn't exist and it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we feel like that. I can't speak for everybody, but like in the instance of Klutch, you know what I'm saying? We're going to do the work on the back end. It's not going to be
Mhm.
courtside and flicks. It's going to be
Right.
guys that know how to negotiate a contract and know how to, help you with all facets of life. You know what I'm saying? So,
Absolutely.
it's definitely attractive, and it helps, cut through and weed through a lot of the BS. And, it's leveled the playing field to an extent, where, like I say, where you got a coach that, an agency that represents every coach and
Yeah.
every Power 5 school. You know what I'm saying? They just call
Right.
the coach and ask for a kid's number, and so it definitely has helped level the playing field. If you will.
One other question, real quick, V2, on that, because you just made me think of one other thing. Is you mentioned kind of the quality of representation, right? I think that's one of the things that gets lost sometimes is when we talk about the flash. There's also real serious quality representation. And one example of that is Rich Paul, obviously, and you work closely with him. And one of the reports that came out, at least during this coronavirus period, is that he negotiated the contracts for I think 90% of the guys who are going to get paid 90% of their salaries, regardless of what happened with this season. And I think the thing that's Rich is finally starting to get credit for is actually being a ridiculously talented and smart agent, not just someone who's connected to LeBron. So what is it that you've seen from Rich, and you've known him for many, many years, that do you think makes him as successful as he is?
Rich is he has a very distinct capability and skill to put the right people in position and around him. He's just a natural when it comes to that. You know what I mean? I mean, the Klutch team, like even the partnership with UTA. I mean, there's a lot of other agencies that were interested in working with Rich, but Rich is very good and very he's very sharp when it comes to putting the right people in position and collaborating and partnering with the right people. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like his ability to create an amazing team. I mean, obviously, Rich is a super sharp dude and a hell of a negotiator. Um, but at the same time, he has multiple people that he can bounce things off of, bounce ideas off of. Oh shit! Hold on.
Make sure the money's right.
Right. I lost the link, man.
You're still on.
You're still on though.
Y'all can see me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good.
Oh, okay, cool. My bad. I don't know what happened. But so Rich, I mean, he's just a smart dude, man. You know what I'm saying? Like he's a smart dude, and he's got a hell of a team behind him.
Mhm.
And that's probably, in my opinion, what has really helped him. And as far as like this like the more recent success that he's had.
Right.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about your guys' relationship. Kind of what sticks with me is that you've had the opportunity to have a lot of great mentors that you took advantage of, but also you offered value too. You've had a long relationship with Rich. You've seen his career take off. Tell us a little bit about how the role he's played in helping you kind of fulfill your dream.
I mean, Rich, you know, just from, I mean, just things as simple and, you know, as, I mean, the first private jet I ever been on was with Rich, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, just kind of, you know, just being an extra inspiration just in terms of, you know, like Rich always had super nice stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I remember, you know, back in the day, like, you know, like when we were in college, you know, Rich was the first person I knew personally that had a Rolex. You know what I'm saying? Jacob watches, like, so just kind of just always inspiring me personally as a friend, and also just as the moves that he was making. And then, you know, Rich he's also a very, I mean, he's super honest. Like, he's not going to blow a lot of smoke up your ass, you know, excuse my language, you know what I'm saying, regarding, you know, whatever it is. Like, if you think you have a great idea, you bring it to Rich. If it's not a great idea, he's going to tell you. So, you know, the brutal honesty, inspiration, and just, you know, leading by example, man. You know what I'm saying? Those are some of the things that I can say honestly have, you know, have been a real help in terms of, you know, the things that he's provided in terms of being a friend.
Yeah, and transitioning from Rich, kind of like the oracle of a lot of this has been LeBron James, right? And seeing a lot of people just say, "Oh yeah, of course, everyone around LeBron's going to be successful because he's LeBron." But what's been special is that a lot of his friends and associates who have their own dreams, whether it's being a DJ, whether it's getting into marketing, becoming an agent, it seems like he focuses on making sure his friends and associates are put in position to fulfill their dreams, not just live off of his dream. Can you kind of tell us about that and how he thinks when it comes to helping his friends?
I mean, honestly, with Brian, it's just like, I mean, I'm trying to think of the way to word it. I mean, he's just like, I mean, he's literally has like a us against them mentality. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you saw it from when he was young, when, you know, when he made a decision to put guys in position at such a young age. I mean, like, looking back at it now, I mean, you figure Rich and Matt, you know, they were like 25, 24 when, you know, Rich put them in position, which is kind of crazy looking back at it now because, you know, we're in our 40s, near in our 40s, and, you know, just trusting guys to do business at such a high level at a young age was extremely bold.
Unprecedented. Yeah.
Unprecedented at the time. So, just, you know, having that mentality of us against them, I feel like LeBron really he carries. I mean, he's like he goes super hard for his team behind the scenes as much as he does, you know, on the court. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's part of the reason why a lot of those opportunities and things have played out the way they have is because it's always like, you know, F everybody else, like, we got this. You know what I'm saying? So I know that sounds kind of cliche and corny.
No, it's real. You see it when you see it how he operates, man. It's not cliche at all. What do you think is the reason why, you know, how he developed that attitude? I mean, because, you know, first of all, I respect the hell out of LeBron, and I respect a lot of the moves that he's made, you know, on the court, obviously, but also off the court. How does someone become like that? I mean, you know, he's just so. How do you become like that?
I mean, I didn't grow up with Brian, so I can't pinpoint a specific moment, or, you know, I don't have any like great stories about how that made, you know, how he may have cultivated that attitude. So, you know,
it seems like he has realized kind of how life works, right? And at least in this country, and he, like you said, if it's not us, then it is them generally. I mean, that's just kind of how it works, especially in a capitalist country. Right. It seems like he's kind of figured that out and embraced that a little bit.
No, for sure.
And he really understands the concept of group economics.
Yes.
And creating an infrastructure for everyone to succeed, right? Not just eat, but succeed.
Right.
And I think that's also a powerful part of his story and his legacy, obviously.
Right. No, for sure.
One other question for you, and then we have something fun before we get you out of here, is obviously, this, first of all, your story is amazing. What you're doing is awesome. We're going to continue following you. You've done so many dope things, and you're probably going to continue to do dope things. But what is your goal? And maybe it's probably a stupid question, knowing how people like us operate. We don't have one goal, but do you have goals, or at least that you look at, next 10, 20, 30 years? How do you want people to kind of look back on your career, let's say 30 years from now?
I guess, so to answer the first part of the question, like my goal, like when it's all said and done, I feel like there's always like a moving targets, things of that nature. I kind of, I'm not one of those people that like, I generally don't have like a 5, 10-year, 15-year plan. That's just not really how I'm wired.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess when it's, one thing that I want to do, it's going to probably sound kind of crazy, but my goal, believe it or not, is I want to be the commissioner of NFL one day. I know that's
dope. That's not crazy.
But you know what I'm saying? I feel like, if Roger Goodell can do it, I can. What the hell?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's like my dream job, if you will.
Yeah.
As far as I got, my kids are older. I have 2 kids in college. My youngest is she's in the 7th grade. So, that's really like majority of my energies, outside of work is cultivating my, what's going on with my kids and things of that nature. So, the ultimate goal is just being the best dad and best husband, like those type of things that, you generally hear during these type of interviews.
Sure.
It's just about growth and embracing the process for me. Like, people, like I get, ever since this Klutch thing, man, I get blown up on LinkedIn and, like everybody's like, yo, how do I become this and how do I do that? Like, I'm damn near 40. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've been kind of waiting in the wings and around, a lot of, incredible stuff. But at the same time, I always made sure I put myself in position for a long time. So, just embracing the process and just continue to enjoy the ride is what it's about for me.
And is entrepreneurship, is that a big part of your legacy and the way you view your legacy?
I would say so. I kind of feel like entrepreneurship is, trying to think of the word. Everybody wants to be a boss now, with social media and all of that. It's kind of like cliche to an extent, but, I think to me it's more of a mindset. Entrepreneurship or being entrepreneurial is more of a mindset than it's just like on some, a thing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In my opinion, you can kind of work a job and still have that same energy at a job.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
It's just, I feel like it's more of a mindset than actually like a thing. But yeah, I definitely feel like it's a big part of my legacy. It will continue to be. I'm an employee for Klutch. I don't own Klutch. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I have a lot of autonomy in my position, and I have other things going on outside of Klutch as well. That's just always going to be a part of my nature and my character.
Yeah.
Before we get to the fun stuff, I have one last question too. Is what do you think it is specifically about guys or people from the Midwest, Ohio specifically, that motivates all of us to kind of reach for the stars? I remember a full circle moment in Houston. You have Mick DJing the Two Kings dinner. You got Bron hosting it. You got Rich doing his thing, Mav doing his thing, you doing your thing. I'm just sitting there like, we all kind of found our own way to make it,
Right.
but we all started in the same place as kids in a place that a whole lot isn't going on.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I think it's the lack of just resources, man. It just, I feel like there's a lack of resources in this area, in this region, in terms of, celebrity or, entertainment, or just a lot of things that people deem cool. There's a void here. So when we're able to, become a part of certain situations and create relationships, we don't take it for granted, and we're able to maximize it because we know how we know how scarce they are. I feel like in a lot of, like people in LA or, New York or even Chicago at times, it's kind of like you kind of take for granted the opportunities that are presented to you. But, coming from a place like Cleveland, you're definitely not going to do that, because that this, those types of things it's truly rare.
Yeah.
Right. I got one more short question, and then we'll get to the last thing. This is just lawyer to lawyer talk now, right? Do you feel like pressure, right, in terms of like, not necessarily I guess a pressure in terms of like style and swag and presentation, because we're dudes. You're just like me. I see you could probably dress in a fly suit, but you could also be just how we are right now in a fitted.
Right.
Do you first of all, have you dealt with any type of I guess discrimination when it comes to people kind of just guessing who you are, what you do, or what your level of intelligence can be? And then also, do you feel a pressure, I guess, maybe for the younger generation of people who are watching to kind of behave or move a certain way, because that you might be a role model to people?
Right. Well, I mean, for me, I guess the first part of your question, I mean, there's definitely been plenty of times, where, I've been in a room, or like I remember even like back when we were doing the footwear customization business, one of our partners, a guy that we work with, actually they actually manufacture some of our footwear. He had a daughter that was an attorney. She didn't pass the New York bar the first time, and he basically told me flat out, "You're not going to pass it the first time."
Wow.
You know what I mean? And I just laughed.
Right.
He was one of the first people I called when I passed it the first time.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
So
what's up.
definitely, there's definitely been some of that. And, it still goes on to the day. People are like, oh, like because I'm not a person that just like walks in the room like, hey, I'm a lawyer,
Right.
Sit in a meeting, or, just be quiet and just listen. Or, I say something, or, like Emory, he's good for just like blurting out like in the middle of a meeting. That's my lawyer right there.
Right.
Like, damn, you're a lawyer? Like,
Right.
I don't have a suit on, but I'm a lawyer. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely eye-opening at times, and there has been some blatant discrimination along the path. But
yeah.
The second part of your question, as far as being a role model, there's definitely pressure. But I mean, I've been a father since I was 19 years old, so I've always had somebody I had to look up to, or like kind of walk, a fine line or a straight line for essentially my entire adult life. So I'm used to that, if you will.
Right.
It doesn't really bother me. It's something I embrace. I mean, I know we all make mistakes and things of that nature, but I don't feel like a ton of pressure per se to, carry myself in a certain way, because I feel like I've had to do that for such a long time anyway.
Absolutely. All right, cool. So we're going to get you out of here on these two kind of fun questions we like to ask all of our guests. The first question is, tell us your top 5 musicians of all time, people that kind of influence your life.
Man. Okay, so I saw the question when y'all texted to me, and I tried not to like have a pre-planned answer, so I was be organic.
Right.
So obviously for me, Jay is my favorite musician, just in terms of not only what he's done, sonically, but from a business standpoint, it's unreal. I'm still holding on to Biggie and Pop. There's a lot of conversation about them not having a a big enough catalog to still be in the top 5. But I mean, I just the impact that they had in the short time where they were here, to me, it hasn't been duplicated.
Right.
So, so those would be top 3, and then the last 2 spots. This is a tough one. Man, like, I was kind of down on Kanye for a little bit, man, just in terms of like the whole Make America Great Again stuff, just that whole situation. And I kind of felt like he wasn't really. I feel like he was losing touch with reality, for lack of a better word. But I still would put Kanye in there just because, I mean, it's hard to argue
with his catalog.
Yeah, I mean, from a production standpoint, I mean, because you said musician, so from production, being an MC himself, I mean, the man is out here putting, he's doing live gospel concerts, that are drawing thousands of people, and not to mention what he's done, from a fashion standpoint, with the whole Yeezy, program. So I say Kanye 4, and then, man, I guess, man, you gotta give it. I gotta give it to Drake, man. I know, he's really right, there's rumors of him not writing all the but I just can't. I mean, just he's another guy. Just being a dude from Toronto that came in the game, with the underdog. The whole, his whole career pretty much started off from like an underdog standpoint, and he was able to surpass that. And I feel like he kind of got off track a little bit when he was trying to figure out like, how do I still create, keep that same underdog energy, even like the most popular person in the world. Right. But, I feel like he's kind of got it together and he's able to walk that fine line. So I get, I'll throw Drake in the mix as far as top.
Good list.
The second part, there's a 2A, right? But the second question is your top 5 athletes.
All right, so number 1 is Bron. Obviously there's a ton of bias there. I'm not even going to hide it or front about it, but I mean, in my opinion, the man's resume speaks for itself. What he's done on the court, and then what he's been able to develop off the court, to me is, is crazy. I would say number 2 is Michael Jordan. Just from, again, just the competitive nature. I mean, I'm sure you guys were tuned in The Last Dance. Somebody sent me the link, and I forced myself not to watch it. Somebody sent me like all the episodes early, but I forced myself not to watch it so I can enjoy it and digest it every week, and et cetera. So to me, Mike J is still, I feel like he is 1A and 1B with him and Bron. Just with the footwear, just growing up, just excitement and the energy, being a kid. I remember when the 11s first dropped. I had the Jordan 1s, the original Jordan 1s in '85. Like, right.
Those memories are so nostalgic.
Yeah, man. So, I still got to throw Mike in there, even though, he snitched on his teammates.
That's what I said. That's what I said. I'm like, you didn't have to say all that.
He said it's past the statute of limitations.
Over here. I was like, man, I got to get out of here. It's not me.
Wow. Nobody even asked you all that.
Right.
I love Mike too, so, but yeah, he did snitch.
That was so unnecessary, but he's still in there. So another random dude is a guy that I had an opportunity to have some conversations with, Doug Williams, man, quarterback from the Redskins. To win the Super Bowl.
Not random at all.
A lot of people, I shouldn't say random. It may be left field for some people. Right. Because, I don't know if you had a chance to ever watch like his Football Life of. They do like there's like this show that comes on.
I love it. I've seen it.
Football Life, and like his was really dope, just as far as like the trials and tribulations of him coming to the NFL and how he was kind of blackballed.
He went to HBCU, right?
Yeah, he went to Grambling.
He went to Grambling, yeah.
he was drafted in the first round by Tampa Bay. He balled out, but he was like kind of like it was tough. I mean, Tampa Bay. I mean, Florida's still the South. I mean, a lot of people forget that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So they ended up like letting him go. He kind of just was like making his way through the league, and he ended up in Washington and ended up winning the Super Bowl for the Redskins. So
yeah,
I put him in my top 5. Mike Tyson, probably number 4. Just like his energy when we were young, like I remember watching him lose to Buster Douglas and like the whole ear biting fight. Like I remember watching, but just as far as like the money that he generated, his skill set, the way he approached boxing. I mean, classic sound bites. I mean, to me, it's just like he was giving us like anything you want in terms of entertainment or from an athlete. I mean, he was providing it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Interviews like super candid.
Right.
You on the camera.
Right.
So yeah, I throw Mike Tyson in there, and then number 5, man, Serena Williams, man.
Yeah.
I mean, just what she's been able to do. I mean, like with LeBron, like I remember him coming to the league. So, certain people have so much pressure on them at such a young age. Her older sister was like doing her thing. They were known as the Williams sisters. So she's like in the spotlight ever since she was a kid. So to be able to deliver on a high level year after year, I mean, to me, you got to take my hat off. You got to take your hat off to her.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that was my top.
I like the list. I like it. You said you had a 2A?
Yeah, it's you've obviously got the benefit of meeting a lot of people.
Right.
Is there an experience or someone that you got to meet that stood out or was kind of gave you that nervous feeling when you met them for the first time?
I mean, to be honest, the first time I met Jay, I was kind of nervous just because it's like Jay. Like the thing about Brian, like I've known Brian since he was like basically in the league. He was like a friend, so it's like it was never really nervousness. But like I met Jay, like this is a guy I listened to my whole life. Like meeting him for the first time, that made me I was definitely a little nervous when I met him.
And also, you met these guys in a way where you're not just a fan; you're like you're involved.
So you can't even be on. You know what I'm saying? Like you're like overcompensating for the fact that you have to be normal.
Right.
And that kind of makes you even more nervous because you're like, damn, do I look normal?
Right.
Complicated situation.
Right.
Yeah, I would say Jay probably, was one of the people I was more nervous when I met. But I've met Beyonce a few times. She's always super cool. Somebody funny I met it's funny, I've met Meek Mill at various times in his career and just kind of seeing his transition. Like I've been around him at various times in his career and his transition of where he is now. It's kind of dope to see his growth.
Yeah, it's dope.
Jeezy is another guy that was like an asshole when I met the first time, but as they've grown, and I think it's a lot of guys that are quote unquote street guys, or they just have that if I don't know you, I'm not going to really
right.
Extra tough. Even I'm meeting these people in rooms and situations where it's if I'm here, I'm obviously cool, bro.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like in a club or anything like that. But that's to me is always cool to meet people at different stages in their career, and I've been around to have the opportunity to meet various artists at different stages, and and being able to witness their own personal growth, which is kind of dope.
And like you said, meeting them in the way and in the rooms and in the scenarios that you've gotten to meet them makes it more special.
Yeah. Well, Kelton, thank you so much, man, for joining us on the Pilot Boys podcast. This has been great, man. We look forward to keep watching you in your career. Let's connect soon, man. We have a lot of synergies, obviously, that exist that we maybe now's a good time to talk about them, but we'll talk about that offline. But keep doing your thing, man.
I appreciate y'all taking the time and inviting me on.
All right, man.
No
Stay
doubt,
safe.
All right.
Yeah, be
Keep
safe
that
out there.
beer
Have a good
going.
one.
Right.
Love the Pilot Boys podcast? Support us on Patreon. Supporters can pledge as little as $1, and we have some cool perks on there. Check out www.patreon.com/Pilot Boys podcast. Show us some love today.
You're listening to the Pilot Boys podcast, episode 27. Time for some news and notes. V, you ready?
Let's get it.
Let's start with some music, man. Chris Brown and Young Thug dropped a joint mixtape recently called Slime B. There's a lot of buzz about it on social media. Have you heard it yet? And if not, do you have any interest?
Haven't heard it yet, but looking forward to hearing it. I think Young Thug, amongst the younger generation, is one of the most talented artists. I don't understand 95% of what he's saying, but it sounds
But it's
good.
dope. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it sounds good. It seems like a natural pairing. Chris Brown can make anything sound good on anyone's record. So we'll definitely check it out a little bit. Did you listen to it?
I haven't yet, but Chris Brown, another thing that people, I guess people who know Chris Brown know that he can rap too. So I'm looking forward to seeing if he's actually rapping on it at all or if he's just singing the whole time.
Yeah.
Kid Cudi has a collaboration with Travis Scott. First time that Kid Cudi's actually had a song to hit #1 on Billboard charts. And that's amazing considering how many great songs he's been a part of. What are your thoughts on Kid Cudi finally hitting #1?
I think it's a well-deserved career accomplishment. I think a lot of the current sound and Kanye's sound and the current sound, even Travis Scott, their sound is heavily influenced by a sound that Cudi created and is kind of the founder of, but often doesn't get credit for it. So this is well-deserved in my opinion. And obviously he's a Cleveland kid and an Ohio kid, so we're going to root for him.
We always root for the Ohio boy. I love Cudi, so definitely going to keep supporting him. Let's transition a little bit out of music into some more pop culture stuff. Nicolas Cage has been tapped to play the Tiger King in an upcoming Netflix documentary. Believe it or not, I still have not seen the Tiger King. I still do not know what it's about. I try to kind of skip over comments on it on social media because I haven't seen it yet, and I don't want people to spoil it for me. But the fact that Nicolas Cage is about to play him seems significant.
Yeah, I mean, if they could figure out the perfect person to play the Tiger King, and you look at Nicolas Cage, you can actually picture it, right? Him playing it. Sometimes I'm nervous about these things because it's like we've already seen the documentary, like we already know the story. This is just a money grab, but it seems like this is going to be. First of all, Nicolas Cage is a phenomenal actor, crazy guy, phenomenal actor. His first TV series, but they are actually going to focus in on how this guy transitioned from whoever he was before he was a Tiger King as a normal person, and that transition into this crazy character, which I think is going to be fascinating.
Okay. So, I still got a lot of catching up to do. I'm going to try to get to that as soon as possible. Let's talk some sports, basketball in particular. It's still not just basketball. We're trying to figure out what are all these leagues going to do. NFL is releasing its schedule. Baseball is trying to figure out how to operate basketball. There are talks of basketball not operating. LeBron went off a little bit on Twitter about, hearing rumors that people are trying to shut down basketball already and not trying to find all the angles. And then you hear stories about some NBA players are secretly practicing right now, trying to figure out ways to get, which isn't surprising. Obviously, you could practice without social distancing. But what are your thoughts on a potential return for the NBA?
Obviously you leave no stone unturned, right? It's from a business standpoint, entertainment standpoint, there are multiple things on the line here, right? Obviously player salaries, coach salaries, facilities that there are leases on, and staff that need to have jobs and get paid. So from that perspective, this isn't just about like, we need the entertainment back. There's an economy around these industries, just like in every industry, that needs to be figured out. So I think that's important in terms of players breaking protocol. I think it's not just players. I think society as a whole, there's only so long before they start breaking the rules per se. So I don't think that they should be held to any standard that's any different from the rest of us. Right.
Yeah. And one other thing too, that's interesting about this, and we've talked about this kind of before, is that whatever happens in the future, near future, it's going to be different from what we were dealing with before. So there's, there are new industries that are going to be created. There's actually new jobs that are actually going to be created. One of the things that I can't remember which team it was, but they're hiring like a hygiene coordinator basically for the stadium, it sounds funny, but at the end of the day, it really does make sense because people are going to move on eventually. And this isn't about eliminating the risk. The risk is not going to be eliminated, but it's how do you reduce it? And those are the type of things that you're going to have to figure out. There are actually different types of spraying systems that spray, cleaning products and different types of cleaning products and, giving out hand sanitizer and temperature checks and giving out face masks. I mean, there are a lot of different moving parts to this thing that could actually make it, a whole industry in and of itself.
I mean, the number one thing is before you have people come into a stadium, is there going to be a reliable way to test people, right? The disinfectant part is a great step, right? And it makes us all feel safer. But up to this point, we've all kind of got an idea of how contagious this thing is, right? And so just making sure and figuring out a way, how do you test people? The players obviously consistently, but then if you're going to have, whether it's 500 people or 10,000 people in, how is there going to be a way to screen these people to make sure you're not bringing in the illness, right?
Yeah, and I think, the reality is the way things are going, things are going to open up before probably we have, maybe not in sporting arenas, but things are going to open up before if every single person that's walking in there has it. And, maybe that's a high standard to have, is that you need to know if every single person who walks in here has it. But given how contagious this thing may be, and it seems like it is, it just seems like it's risky, man. Once you open things up to the public like that, and if you don't know if everybody has it, the fact that one person could touch something and another person can touch it, and then all of a sudden they're just spreading it. I mean, that seems dangerous, but we'll see. I mean, what we do know is that there are, people like, I guess, people hate lawyers, but one thing that I think is potentially good about lawyers in this potential situation is people know, like, you will get sued. Don't fuck around here. So
that's the main reason. It's not, we care about our fans. Let's just be honest. We don't want to get our asses sued.
Yeah, because the lawsuits are already starting in a lot of different ways. So that's something to keep an eye on. We're talking about basketball, so let's talk about The Last Dance, episodes 5 and 6. It's funny, as each episode closes, I get more and more sad about the fact that this thing is about to end.
Know,
but
right?
What were some of your takeaways that you had for episode 5 and 6?
I mean, one of the main ones is this fascination that we as a society have with building someone up into a human, into a god, and then trying to find ways to destroy them, right? Like at the end of the day, when I saw that Michael Jordan wrote a check to someone for $50,000, that's like $10 to him. You know what I mean? And I don't think it affected any of his relationships, but it was that need that everyone loved this guy so much. Let's find a way to tear him apart now. I don't know why we have that need. We're all human beings, right? Like no one is a god, and we all have our own skeletons. I'm just fascinated by that consistent need, especially in celebrity and entertainment culture, to always find the holes and the flaws in people. We all have them. He was a competitive addict and a gambler,
Yeah. And it's funny because there are a lot of things that struck me in The Last Dance, but I think the biggest takeaway for me was kind of Nike, looking at what Nike is today versus what it was when they signed Michael Jordan, and how he is literally, I mean, if you could really just say one person could be responsible for the success of one huge entity, I mean, how could you not attribute it to Mike? What he did for that brand. That was essentially an upstart at that time, they basically said. And then the kind of colossal failures, or at least regret, that Converse and Adidas have for not signing Mike, I think was fascinating. And then also Mike's agent, the fact that he was forward thinking enough to realize, first of all, that, a team sport player could be branded as an individual athlete, and not just a team sport player, but Michael Jordan specifically.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was fascinating. So, and then obviously
the role his mom played, right? Like everyone kind of playing a role in getting him into that position.
Yes.
Nike. And then I think also it showcases the value of having someone who is that competitive as a spokesperson for your brand, right? I told the story about what he did in the Dream Team Olympics covering the Reebok logo. It's like, if you had Jordan in on your brand, it wasn't just that you were getting the endorsement. He was competitive with that aspect of his career. And obviously it's the biggest part of the reason he's a billionaire. And it seems like watching this documentary, it's more than well earned. Probably deserves more than he's getting, you know?
And then obviously Kobe, being a part of it. I wish we could have got a chance to see more of him. And also, obviously we wish he was here with us, kind of live tweeting this thing as well. But one of the things that he said that I think a lot of people don't really realize about Kobe is Kobe says, there is no me if there's no Michael Jordan. So don't even, that comparison, just stop it. I went and learned from Buddha essentially. And that's why I am who I am today. So the comparisons stop. That's the God. And I followed in his footsteps.
And what's also fascinating, what's really, really fascinating about this is that none of us really knew that these guys were this close until now, right? Until recently, their ability to keep their relationship secretive, because we always thought that maybe Jordan didn't like Kobe because he was trying so hard to be like him. But to know that he was a mentor to him and that he helped him throughout his entire career is a beautiful thing to find out and have revealed to us.
For sure. Let's talk some football first. Just obviously want to send our condolences to the Shula family. RIP to Don Shula. That's, obviously a big loss in football. No good transition from that, but yeah. What were your thoughts when you heard it?
Well, Ohio is well known for its coaches, and he's from the area, and he's pretty much, there's probably 3 or 4 guys that you can say are the greatest football coaches of all time, and he's on that list, right? Perfect season, winningest overall record. I mean, the guy is a force, and he is the patriarch of that Dolphins organization, just as much as Dan Marino is, right? So big loss for the football world, but he lived a long life and left a great legacy behind, right? So I think that's all you can have for.
That's right. And I guess one other thing on football, the Browns picked up David Njoku's option. I guess it's not that surprising, but I guess it is in a way because they signed Austin Hooper, right, to a big deal. And but Andrew Berry said this was a no-brainer for them to sign Njoku. The reason why it's, I guess, a little bit surprising is just seeing around the league, a lot of guys' fifth-year options are not being picked up. I mean, even Malik Hooker, they said they're not picking up his option. What were your thoughts on the David Njoku thing?
I think, this is where analytics comes in, right? We know the Browns are an analytics-based organization, and they probably calculated the value with his ceiling and said, you know what, I think the Austin Hooper contract, they can probably get out of in 2 years, right? So if Njoku actually develops into the stud superstar that he has the potential to reach, you suddenly have a good situation for yourself, right? And then also the coach in Minnesota, you have multiple tight ends running around in Minnesota. It seems like he values having multiple tight ends on the field too, right? So that's absolutely that's what I thought.
Yeah. And the Browns run a lot of 2 tight end sets also. So, and last thing for news and notes, we've had a pretty engaging week on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram with some of these polls that we've posted. And we're going to continue posting them, but they're pretty fun during this time period. The first one was basically, pairing a quarterback, legendary quarterback and wide receiver, 4 different options. We gave a scenario, the ball's in the 50-yard line, 45 seconds left, 1 timeout. Who are the options that you would, which of these 4 options would you choose? The first one was Dan Marino and Ocho Cinco as an option. B was Brett Favre and Jerry Rice. C was Warren Moon and Julio Jones. And D was Peyton Manning and Chris Carter. And obviously all these guys in their prime. And obviously there's no bad answer here, right? These are all legends that we're talking about. But you seem to be pretty set on picking the Favre and Rice one. And I took the Peyton and CC one. Let's talk about it for a second.
Yeah, I heard a lot of chatter about Brett Favre throwing an interception, right? And I was just like, okay, Brett Favre, do you guys go back and watch what he does? He makes some bad decisions early in games and stuff like that. But in clutch time, he's one of the top quarterbacks of all time, right? And you pair him with potentially the greatest football player that's ever played in Jerry Rice. And you're like, these are all great options. And second for me was your choice, obviously. But I think you got to go with the top 5 quarterback and the best receiver. If you compare Jerry Rice's numbers to any other receiver that's ever played, it's like you and also what Jerry Rice has left us in terms of what he's done in clutch moments, catches and plays that he's made in big games. It was like you always knew the ball was going to Jerry Rice. Like, that was my justification. I mean,
first of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with this, right? We're splitting, splitting high grade diamonds here, right?
Yeah.
But for me, the reason why I like the Peyton and CC one is because of just the precision. First of all, Peyton is just going to nickel and dime. He's going to take the 12-yard out route you to death, all the way until they get into the end zone.
Chris Carter might be a decoy the whole drive, right?
right, exactly. And CC, all he does is catch touchdowns. You know what I mean? So he's not dropping anything. So I just kind of love that pairing. It's funny. I love doing these things because they're kind of fun just to imagine what the world would be like if we ever got to see these.
And actually hearing the analysis, right? Like because
and hearing us.
Yeah, because all of them had people supported all of those choices.
All the choices got supported,
and they had solid reasoning behind their choices. So I think
they absolutely did. Yeah.
So that's
So people should definitely hit us up on social media at Pilot Boys Pod, on Twitter at Pilot Boys Podcast, on Instagram and Facebook. Let us know what you think about that one. And then the second one that we did 3, but we'll talk about one more of them. And then you could find the rest of them on social media, was the basketball one that we posted today, which is basically a 2-on-2 tournament. If you pick the right, combination for who would win, you get $1 million. And so the combinations were this. A was Larry Bird and Zion Williamson. B was Scottie Pippen and Steph Curry. C was Magic Johnson and Dirk Nowitzki. And D was Penny Hardaway and Kevin Durant. And early on, it seemed like a lot of people were picking Penny Hardaway and Kevin Durant. That was like the runaway favorite. And then all of a sudden, there's a surge started happening with all the rest of them, starting with C, with Magic and Dirk, and then even with Scottie and Steph, and then with Bird and Zion. So obviously, again, I don't know if there's a wrong answer, but your answer seemed to be D. Is that right?
I felt like D was going to be the most popular answer. But I think when we were talking about it, I was like, when you're talking about a 2-on-2 game, you're talking about who are going to be the most competitive guys. And I always go back to Larry Bird because I think we heard about Michael Jordan and how competitive he is, right? And he just refuses to lose. I think outside of Michael Jordan, the most competitive person ever in basketball is Larry Bird. And we don't know what Zion's ceiling is yet, how good he is, especially evaluated against all the greats. But it would be D, but A is kind of like a close answer for me. Bird.
I like A. I like all of the pairings, to be honest. I like the reason why I like A is because of what you said about Bird. I don't think people realize, first of all, I don't think they realize how good of a basketball player he is. And then also how much of an assassin he is, Yeah. And I think that he would coach Zion up to be in the right spots, and and Zion's athletic enough to pretty much body anybody. If you think about it, like if you think about the A pairing versus the D pairing, you would have Bird would probably be on KD, maybe he would be on Penny, and Zion would body the shit out of Kevin Durant. So I mean, they would have trouble with that. That's not like, oh, you just automatically.
Would Bird play left-handed and they still win, right?
Right. Exactly.
We talked about that crazy stat line. He played a game left-handed.
The whole game left-handed. We posted the video.
47 points, 13 rebounds, 11 assists, playing left-handed.
And he just decided he was going to do it. Like it wasn't like I'm just going to do it. Yeah, he was bored. So and I think Again, these are just fun conversations.
What was your choice though? What was yours? Was D? If you had to choose,
I think I want to go with A, man. I think I want to go with A. I understand. First of all, let's talk just real quick on D. Penny Hardaway is a complete stud, right? And when in his prime, he was a complete stud. I think people forget because he got injured and so on and so forth. But he was a complete stud. So I don't want it to sound like I'm sleeping on him. But I love the I love the pairing. I think part of me just likes imagining what it would be like to see some of these guys play cross generations like that with totally different styles. So again, hit us up at Pilot Boys Pod on Twitter, at Pilot Boys Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You'll see a lot of these that we posted. There's been a ton of engagement around them. We're going to continue to post them. They're actually pretty exciting. And if you have a good idea for one of the ones that you think we should post, or, you know, in a different sport or whatever, we would love to do that. So hit us up and let us know. That is all we have for news and notes. Shout out to Premier Podcast for getting us set up with our podcast during this quarantine period. Make sure you guys check them out for all of your podcast needs at premierpodcast.com. And make sure you check them out on social media at Premier Podcast. That's all we have for today's show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Shout out to our guest, Kelton Crenshaw. Don't forget, sharing is caring. Subscribe to the Pilot Boys Podcast on Apple, Spotify, Patreon, and YouTube. And please follow us on social media at Pilot Boys Pod on Twitter and at Pilot Boys Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And follow the host on Twitter. I am at Macadon Music, and V is at The Swant. And don't forget to grab some Pilot Boys wristbands at shop.pilotboys.com.
And always remember, be you. You is fly.
Pilot Boys out!